In the little town of Graysville, something strange was happening. No one could say exactly when it had started, but slowly, quietly, the colors were fading. Flowers that used to burst with red, yellow, and purple were now dull, lifeless shades of gray. The blue sky was forever covered with a layer of dull, gray clouds, and the grass had lost its vivid green. Even the sun seemed to cast a weaker, colder light, as if it too had grown tired of the colorless town. Lila noticed it more than anyone else. She was 8 years old, and she loved colors. She wore bright pinks, yellows, and blues every day, and loved to draw colorful pictures of flowers, butterflies, and rainbows. But these days, her favorite markers and paints just didn't seem as bright as they used to. One gloomy, gray afternoon, Lila sat by her window staring at the town square. The gray streets, gray rooftops, and gray trees were all she could see. "It's like the world has lost its smile," Lila said softly. Her mother, who was dusting nearby, paused and looked at her. "What's the matter, sweetie?" "Everything's so gray," Lila said, waving her hand at the view outside. "It's like there's no life left in anything." Her mother sighed and nodded. "I know what you mean. It's been like this for a while. No one knows why. But maybe there's something you can do to cheer things up." Lila thought about it. She had always loved helping people. Maybe her mom was right. Maybe she could make a difference. The next day, Lila decided to search for inspiration. She wanted to find something to bring color back to Graysville. She remembered her mother mentioning some old art supplies in the attic, and with a spark of hope, she climbed the creaky stairs to the dusty old attic. The attic was filled with boxes and stacks of old furniture covered in sheets. She carefully moved aside a few boxes and spotted an old chest in the corner, covered in dust. Lila opened the chest and found something extraordinary, a small wooden box with a picture of a rainbow on the lid. It looked like a child's art box, faded and scratched, but beautiful. Curious, Lila lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in a velvet lining, were 12 crayons, each a different bright color. She picked one up, the yellow one. It glowed faintly in her hand, as if it were somehow alive. She noticed a note tucked inside the lid. In delicate handwriting, it read, "These crayons bring color to the world, but only if you use them to help others." Lila's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Maybe this is it. Maybe I can use these crayons to bring color back." Back in her room, Lila decided to try one of the crayons. She looked at the yellow crayon and thought, "What if I use this to help Mom?" She found a piece of paper and carefully drew a big, bright sun with a happy face in the middle. As soon as she finished, the sun on her paper glowed, and a warm light filled her room. She ran to the window and gasped. The real sun outside was shining a little brighter. There was a soft hint of yellow in the sky that hadn't been there before. Lila's heart leapt. It was true. The crayons were magic. She realized that if she could help other people around town, she might be able to bring all the colors back. The next morning, Lila decided to visit Mr. Baker, who ran the town's bakery. His shop used to be the most cheerful place in Graysville, filled with the scent of fresh bread and warm pastries. But now, even his bakery had lost its joy. The sign above his shop was peeling, and the pastries looked as dull as everything else. Lila walked up to Mr. Baker, who was sweeping the sidewalk in front of his shop. "Good morning, Mr. Baker," Lila said, giving him a big smile. "Good morning, Lila," he replied, though his voice was tired. "What brings you here?" "I thought maybe your shop could use a bit of color," Lila said. Mr. Baker laughed softly. "Color? In Graysville? I don't think I even remember what that looks like anymore." "Well, I do," Lila replied confidently. She took out her red crayon and a sheet of paper and began drawing a picture of a big, cheerful loaf of bread with a bright red heart in the middle. When she finished, the picture started to glow, just like the sun had. She handed it to Mr. Baker, who looked at it in surprise. As he held the drawing, the colors started to spread from the picture into the real world. His shop sign turned from gray to a deep inviting brown with red letters, and the loaves of bread in his window filled with a rich golden hue. Even the flowers by his door turned a soft pink, as if they had just been given new life. Mr. Baker's eyes widened. "Lila, how did you do this?" Lila just smiled. "It's a little magic. I think Graysville needs color, and I need to help people to make it come back." Mr. Baker's face brightened with a smile, and he handed her a warm pastry in return. "Thank you, Lila. You've given my shop its spirit back." Lila walked through town. She spotted Mrs. Potts, an elderly woman who loved gardening. Her garden, once full of beautiful flowers, now looked as gray as the rest of the town. Mrs. Potts stood there looking sadly at her flower beds. "Hi, Mrs. Potts," Lila called, waving. "Oh, hello, dear," Mrs. Potts replied with a tired smile. "Isn't it sad how all the colors have left my garden?" "I think I might be able to help," Lila said, holding up her crayons. She pulled out her blue and green crayons and began to draw a little garden on her paper with blue and purple flowers, green leaves, and butterflies flitting about. As she finished, the picture began to glow, and she felt warmth in her hands. When she looked up, Mrs. Potts gasped. Her garden was coming back to life, colors slowly seeping back into each flower. The daisies turned a cheerful yellow, the tulips blossomed in shades of red and pink, and even the grass became a lush, deep green. "Oh, Lila," Mrs. Potts said, tears in her eyes. It's beautiful. Thank you, dear. I never thought I'd see these colors again." Lila smiled, feeling the happiness spread in her chest. She had done something small, but it had made a big difference. With each act of kindness, Lila's crayons helped restore a bit of color to Graysville. She helped her classmates with colorful drawings that lifted their spirits, decorated the town fountain, and even drew a colorful chalk mural in the town square that brought the townsfolk together, each person smiling and feeling hopeful. Soon, Graysville wasn't gray anymore. The sky was blue, the trees were green, and rainbows danced across the sky whenever it rained. One day, when Lila reached for her crayons, she found the box empty. She was surprised, but not disappointed. She realized that the color had come back to stay. The townsfolk were happier, kinder, and the world around them was filled with life once more. And Lila never forgot that a little bit of kindness, imagination, and courage could bring the world back to life.